Hi, I'm Paul Kirch, host and founder of Boss Academy, and we're really grateful you're here. Now, we're a community of like-minded professionals who are on a mission to make a difference. We're purpose-driven. We're focused on leaving the world a better place through our own mission. And together, we support each other on that journey. And if you're a part of this and you want to join, today your enriched journey is going to begin because we provide the resources, the tools, the collaboration, and the community to bring you to new heights, boost your confidence, and give you the tools and the opportunities to succeed in ways you can't on your own. I'd like to give a quick shout out to our sponsors who make these events possible. Edmanity, the breakthrough system to marketing success like nothing else. The most powerful marketing and branding assessment tool available in the industry. Check them out at edmanity.com. The Merrill Institute for Nonverbal Intelligence, understanding body language and nonverbal intelligence training that was formed to teach others the skills to communicate skillfully and effectively with those around them. Visit themerrillinstitute.com. Michelle Lee Coaching. Increase sales up to 300%, close deals faster, build stronger and more meaningful relationships with a proven system, state-of-the-art technology, and all the training you need to exponentially grow your business. Visit my.bankcode.com/Boss Academy. And Websites by Celliance. Output-driven, outcome-based. Remember, one size fits none. ROI-based digital marketing and B2B sales to build a website that's going to help you transform your business. Visit Celliance.com. Check out our amazing member benefits at bossacademy.com, the last boss you'll ever need. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Oakland McCulloch brings 40-plus years of leadership experience, including 23 years as a combat arms officer in the United States Army. His Secrets to Success presentation is based on his 40 years of leadership, coaching, teaching, and mentoring experiences. Now, Oakland highlights principles that will help you be a more successful person at work and in your personal life. In this presentation, he'll cover the following subjects: importance of critical thinking, motivation, self-discipline, habits, and decision-making. This is a golden opportunity to learn from an amazing leader, and Oakland believes that this presentation is a culmination of everything that is the secret to success. I want you all to welcome Oakland McCulloch to Boss Academy.
And thanks for everybody for being here today. I appreciate it. But I especially want to thank Paul for inviting me to be a guest speaker here on the Boss Academy, because I really am honored to do that. So today, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to tell you that I got all the secrets to being successful. You guys are all successful. You guys kind of figured out some things. There is no foolproof method to being successful. You can do lots of good things and not be successful. There is no checklist. I'm not going to sit here and give you a whole bunch of checklist things to be successful. There's no cookie cutter solution, no one size fits all solution. There's a bunch of different things that you can do to help yourself to be successful. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Some things that you can do that will help contribute to you becoming either successful or even more successful than you are today. And there are some things. The first thing I always tell people, same thing when I give my leadership presentation, I tell them the first thing you got to do is define what leadership means to you. And the first thing you got to do if you want to be successful is define what you define as success. And you can't let other people define that for you. And I can't define that for you. Everybody has to do that themselves. You need to figure out what you think success is for you. And it's going to change throughout your life. I can tell you what I thought was successful. That my definition of success when I was 22 years old as a second lieutenant is much different than it is now as I'm 60 and I'm a grandfather and I'm just an old man trying to get to heaven. My definition of success has changed. And that's okay. It should change as you move along in your life and in your career. So don't think that once you define it, it's set and you can't make any changes to it, because you can. I always tell people, once you figure out what you are defining as success, what you think for you yourself is successful, then you got to figure out, once you figured out what it is, then you got to figure out what it's going to take for you to get there, to be successful. And then you just got to figure out and do what it takes to do that. That's the hardest part. We all can figure out things that help us be successful. The hard part is then actually doing them on a day-to-day basis to make yourself successful. And I think that's the hard part in a lot of parts of life, whether it's leadership, success, whatever. So the first thing I always talk about is what limits us, because that's really the key to it, is what limits us from being successful. And when I ask that question, I get lots of answers. Time. Well, there's never enough time. Let's be honest. I'm the expert at trying to fit 36 hours in a 24-hour day. And I'm just here to tell you, you only get 24. There's nothing more than that. So time is always going to be an issue. You just got to figure out how to prioritize that time to do the things that are important. I also get things like money and resources and, my talent, my knowledge, which those are things you can fix. Fear of all kinds. And fear is the biggest thing that defeats most people, is fear, keeps people from doing things that they should do. And then the last piece is commitment. You got to commit. So all those things, every one of those things that I just mentioned, are all things that you are in charge of. So if those are the things that are limiting you from being as successful as you can be, then you can eliminate those things that are holding you back from being as successful as you can. And really, if you think about it, that is the only limitation. We are the only people who limit how successful we're going to be. It's not all those other things. It's us, our mindset, our commitment, those kinds of things. Part of the reason is because some of us aim for being average. And I heard a quote one time said, I didn't come here to be average. I came here to be great. And that's the mindset that you really need to have, is that you don't want to just be average. And a lot of people settle for average. So you got to really do that, have that correct mindset. Yeah. Anybody ever heard somebody say that's good enough? That phrase just drives me nuts. Okay. I hate that phrase. If that's the best you got, okay. But good enough is just a horrible mindset to have. And the other thing that in our mindset that we got to eliminate is that negativity that says, I can't do this, or we can't do this. There may be some things you can't do, but the first answer should always be, let's try, let's do it. Because you really are constrained only by the walls that you build around yourself, because it is about us. And if we want to be successful, then we can be. And so I think that's part of it, is just the mindset. Again, the three things I always hear, negative things I always hear, is I don't have enough time. Again, there's never enough time. So you got to set some priorities. I do a few things every day that help me with my priorities. Before I leave every night, on my desk, I take out a 3x5 card and I write down the things I have to do tomorrow in the priority list that it needs to be done. Now, do I get to all those things? Absolutely not. Because tomorrow morning when I walk in here, my boss the guy I work for, I only have one boss, she's at home, but the guy I work for may walk into my office and say, Oak, I need you to do this today. And all my priorities just changed. But at least I've got something when I walk in the office, I know what I'm supposed to do that day, unless something comes up that changes that. So you got to have those priorities and really stick to those priorities. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it really is. The other piece that always baffles me is I hear people say, well, nobody believes it can be done. Well, you know what? The people who are telling you that, the people who are telling you it can't be done or you won't be able to do it, are probably the people who don't want to see you do it. They don't want you to be successful. So don't pay attention to them. I always say, use those naysayers as your motivation to get done what it is that they don't think you can do. And I always say, it's a challenge. Use them as a challenge. They're challenging you to do what you're able to do. So, or doing what you're saying you're going to do, and they don't believe you can. So prove them wrong. And then the third one is, somebody told me one time, well, what if I fail? Okay, what if you do? But more importantly, what if you don't fail? What if you are successful at what you do? And the real thing of this is that you're never going to know unless you try. If you don't try, I promise you're going to fail. It's kind of like Michael Jordan said, or Gretzky said, the famous hockey player. He said, you're going to miss 100% of the shots you never take. Guaranteed. No doubt about it. If you don't try, then you're not going to be successful at whatever it is you want to do. You got to give it a try. And it really is the fears that limit most people. People are afraid of all kinds of things, and you got to overcome those fears. And, courage, you got to have the courage to do that. And courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is the ability to go ahead and do something even when you are afraid of it. And believe me, I've done plenty of things in the Army that I was afraid when I was doing it, but you still got to do it. We all have fears. I think I've probably only known 3 people in my life that I would classify as absolute fearless, and all 3 of them are dead. So I think fear is a good thing. You need to have some fear, but you got to be able to overcome it and do the things that you want to do and that you need to do. So how do we do that? What are some things that we can use? And most of you probably use some of these things as well, and maybe not as well as you want to, and maybe today will help you step up and do things a little bit better. I think the first thing that helps people be successful is motivation. We need to be motivated at what it is that we're doing. And one of the easy ways to stay motivated or to get yourself motivated is to find that purpose in your life. Before we were on here, I was just talking to Paul. I'm getting ready to retire from my day job here, recruiting for Army ROTC, because I want to do what my passion is right now, which is get out and talk and write my second book and all those kinds of things that right now are my passion. So those are the things that help motivate you. If you can find that purpose in your life and what is burning inside you to do, then you can be a little bit more motivated. And the motivation helps you be driven. It helps you be tenacious. I used to have a guy who worked for me, and I mean, he was just like a tiger. I mean, if you gave him something, he wouldn't quit until it was done. I mean, it was amazing to watch him work. He loved what he was doing. And that's the third part of that piece is never quit. You got to keep trying. One of my favorite quotes is by Hal Moore, who was a lieutenant. He's a retired lieutenant. He passed away just about a year ago, but he was a retired lieutenant colonel. And most of you probably don't recognize the name, but you recognize the movie that was about him and his soldiers. We Were Soldiers Once and Young, and Mel Gibson played him in the movie. And he used to say that life is not like baseball. It's not 3 strikes and you're out. If you try something and it doesn't work, try something else. And if that didn't work, try something else. And if that didn't work, try something else, and keep trying until you figure out what works. So never quit. Just be tenacious about it. And I think that will help you. And I think the third part that helps you stay motivated is that you got to celebrate. You got to take time out to celebrate those achievements and those successes. Even if they're little successes and little achievements, celebrate those. And that keeps you motivated to now move on to the next success, the next achievement, maybe that next step that you need to take. So take the time out to do that. Not a whole lot of time, because you want to keep moving, but take out a little bit of time to say, okay, I accomplished something today. I did something well, and I'm moving in the right direction. Then the second part is self-discipline. And you got to have self-discipline. The difference between discipline and self-discipline is huge. Anybody can be disciplined. We do that in the Army in basic training. The drill sergeant stands over you and says, you're going to do this, and it watches you until you get it done. That's discipline, and that's almost worthless in life. Self-discipline, if you want to be successful, is the key. You got to do things because it's the right thing to do, because it's the thing you need to do, and not because somebody's standing over top of you and watching you and making you do it, but because you want to do it. And my father used to tell me when I was a kid, and my father was just a mean old man, but he used to tell me all the time, discipline yourself so somebody else doesn't have to. And so he was drilling into me, even as a young age, the importance of self-discipline and figuring out what it is I needed to do. Whether somebody was ever going to check up on it or not, do it, because it's the right thing to do, and it's that self-discipline in you. Pay attention to details. The small details are amazing. I saw something the other day. It said, if you walk a mile every day, you've walked 365 miles that year. If you save $10 every year, and it's just those little every day, then it's those little things you do every day that start to add up. And that's really key, is pay attention to the little things and get those things right. So why is self-discipline so important? Because anybody in here motivated every single day? Of course not. We like to think we are, we want to be, but we're not. There's days you're going to get up and you don't feel well, like some people said down here, or you just lack a little bit of motivation that day. And that's where self-discipline comes in. Self-discipline is going to make you do the things that you would have done gladly if you were motivated, but you're not motivated that day. So the self-discipline kicks out in and says, okay, Oak, you're supposed to do this. You don't feel like doing it, but you're going to do it because it's the right thing to do and you need to do it. So that's why that self-discipline is so important. Part of self-discipline and part of motivation, in my opinion, comes from daily habits and routines. Get yourself into routines and daily habits, because we're all creatures of habit. Anybody who believes you're not a creature of habit is fooling yourself. Because guys, when you shave tomorrow morning, I guarantee you shave exactly the same way you shaved today. Exactly. When you put your shoes on, most of us put our shoes on exactly the same way every single day. And habits are good because that allows you to free up some time. Your mind, you do things without having to think about them, and it frees up your mind to do things that you need to think about. But it also gets you into the routine of doing things well and moving in the right direction. So habits and routines are fantastic. I always tell people I set my alarm clock for 5 o'clock every morning. Whether I have to get up early that day or not, I set it for 5 o'clock every morning. It very seldom goes off. I'm usually up before that, unfortunately. But I've got a habit that I get into, and I like to stay in that habit. And when I'm doing things as a habit and in a routine, I find myself being more successful because I know what to expect. I know what's coming next. I know those things. There's plenty of changes in the world, and changes are always going to happen. And there's going to be things that you never expect come up. But again, kind of like my priority list, as long as you're starting from a known point, now you can deviate from that. And when that unexpected thing comes up, now you can move back to your routine and your habit, and you're back on track doing the things that you know you have to do. I believe that your discipline and your habits dictate your success above anything else. Those three things, motivation, self-discipline, and habits, are what really separate very successful people from either successful or not successful people. So don't be afraid to start coming up with some habits and routines. You got to lose excuses. We all make excuses for things, but I promise you, once you lose your excuse, once you stop making excuses, then you'll start finding some results. And I think part of that goes back to habits, routines, and all those kinds of things that make us do the things we're supposed to do. One of the things that I think is so important is goal setting. And I think a lot of us don't understand, a lot of people in America, a lot of people in business, and people who are even somewhat successful, I don't think they understand what goals are. First of all, I think when we set a goal, you don't set the goal to the next level. I always tell people, and I had a boss one day who said, Oak, when you're setting a goal, think big. And then forget about that and go even bigger. I always tell people, when you start thinking about a goal, don't think about what's possible. Think what should be. In a perfect world, and I know we don't live in a perfect world, but think about when you're setting your goal, in a perfect world, where would I want it to be? And then you start striving toward that. And, Vince Lombardi, one of my favorite quotes, it's in my book. I use it in my leadership presentation. I've seen it all over LinkedIn the last couple of days. Excellence, you'll never reach excellence. But if you strive for excellence, you might get success. You might get pretty close. Or perfection is not, you can't get to perfection, but if you strive for perfection, you might get to excellence. And excellence is the goal, because nobody's perfect and there's no perfect world. But start there and work toward whatever you think in the real world, in the perfect world, your goal should be, and work toward that and see how close you get. You'd be surprised. Then part of that goal setting is you got to be courageous and you got to take some risk. Don't be afraid to take risks. If you don't go outside your comfort zone, you don't do things that you didn't think you could do. If you don't try to do some things that you didn't think you could do, again, you're never going to do them. So don't be afraid to take those risks and get outside your comfort zone. Be courageous to do that. My opinion, to be a goal, you got to have three things. If you don't do these three things, it's not a goal, it's a dream. Dreams are worthless. Goals are what get you where you have to be. Number one, you have to write it down. If you don't write it down, it's just a dream. If you got a goal in mind, write it down on a 3x5 card, a piece of paper, whatever, write it down. Number two, you must commit to it. You got to tell yourself, again, goes back to self-discipline, motivation. I'm going to commit to this and I'm going to make it happen. You got to commit to it. And then the third thing to make it a goal is you got to do something within the first 24 hours to start achieving that goal. When I wrote my book, it was funny. I was at a motivational. I always thought I wanted to write my book, and that was always something I wanted to do. I was at a motivational speaking event with Jonathan Fanning. And if none of you have ever heard Jonathan Fanning talk, look him up. He's a fantastic motivational speaker. And it was a 3-hour event at our Catholic church. And me and my wife and her mom and a couple of people in our condo went to it. And he didn't talk the whole 3 hours. He talked for about 45 minutes. And then we had music and some other things. And during each break, I'd go up and talk to him because I knew he was doing what I wanted to do, what my passion was at that point, which was to get out and speak. And he gave me some good ideas. And the last time I went up to talk to him after the last 45-minute presentation, we were talking and he said, "Oak, have you written a book?" And I said, "Well, I'm thinking about it." And he looked at me and he said, "Stop thinking about it and do it." So I went home that night and I wrote out my table of contents. So I said, I'm going to write up my book. I committed to it and I wrote out my table of contents that night. So write it down, commit to it, and do something in the first 24 hours toward that goal. And now it's a goal. It's not a dream. Okay. So what I want you to do is ask yourself 3 simple questions. This will help you to help you down your road to being success. And they're simple questions. Every time you think about doing something, just ask yourself these 3 questions. What if I could? Because how many times have you thought about doing something, you said, well, I can't do that. Well, what if you could? Simple question. Asking the question opens up opportunities. It doesn't put anything on the line. You can always eventually determine that now I can't do that, and you don't have to. But ask the question, what if you could? Now you can start thinking about the opportunities and ways to actually do it if you decide you do want to do it. The second question is, why not? Why don't I want to do that? What is the fear of not doing it? What's the fear that I'm going to give something up if I do this? And fear has killed more goals and dreams than anything else. We all have that fear of failure, fear of success. You ever known somebody who was afraid to be successful? I have. They wanted no part of it because they didn't want any extra responsibility. They didn't want any extra. They were happy where they were, and they didn't want to move up. So they didn't want success, and I see that all the time. And then the other one is fear of rejection. We all kind of have that fear, especially us guys. And, remember the dances back in high school where the girls were lined up on one side of the wall and the guys were all lined up on the other side. Guys afraid to walk over there because they're afraid you're going to get rejection. So ask yourself, why not? What is it what fear is it that's keeping you from actually thinking about doing what it is that you want to do? And then the third question is, once you've overcome those other 2, is what do I have to do to make it happen? And then just start thinking about okay, if I really want to do this, then what are the steps? What are the things I got to do? And again, small goals, small achievements every day or every week or every month moves you toward that goal. But start figuring out what it is that you need to do in order to be successful at what it is you want to do. And the thing that, again, the only thing that's standing in your way is you. We all stand in our own way. We're the ones who determine how successful or unsuccessful we're going to be. And it's all based on us. If we want to do it, if we are in the right mindset, then we'll be able to do that. Because mindset really is the thing that separates the best from the rest. If you have the right mindset, if you're willing to do those things, then you can be successful, I promise you. Going back to the thing about good enough, never settle for good enough. That you're better than that, and you can be better than that. Good becomes the enemy of the best. That, I forget who said that, but it's a famous quote that I absolutely believe in. And I know Patton used it a couple of times, but I'm sure somebody said it before he did. Good becomes the enemy of the best. Never settle for good enough. That drives me nuts when I hear people say that. My father, when I was growing up, he had this thing called the 75% rule. And he used to tell me all the time, and everything I don't know, I wish I had $1 for every time he told me this. Son, if you can't do something better than 75% of the people doing it, then you need to do one of two things. You either need to figure out how to get better at it. And that can be over time. I mean, he didn't expect me to be at 75% the day I started it. Or if you're not willing to do that, then go do something else, because obviously it doesn't matter enough to you. So again, it goes back to your goals. If it really matters to you and you set it as a goal, then you ought to be willing to work at whatever it is that you need to do to reach that goal. Later today, sometime today, when you get a few minutes, I know you're all busy, but when you get a few minutes, I want you to take the time to do this. Ask yourself this question and write down the answer to it. What would it take for me to be the best at ... Whatever it is that you want to be the best at. What would it take for me to be the best at whatever it is that you want to be the best at? You know what? The exercise is only going to take you a few minutes, but you already know the answer to it. You just haven't been willing to do it. If you do that and you dedicate yourself to doing what it is you know you got to do to be the best at whatever it is that you want to be, then that will change your life. That will make you be better at what it is that you want to do, and be more successful at whatever you want to do. Even if you're a success now, and most, assuming all of you consider yourself successful, I certainly do, or you wouldn't be on this show probably. You can always be more successful. And I think if you use that little exercise, what would it take for me to be the best at whatever it is I want to be at? Write down what it takes, and then actually commit yourself to do it. I think you'll find that really helps you be more successful than you think you are, or that you can be. I think one of the things, and we don't do, in fact, I know we don't do a good job of teaching anymore, is critical thinking. I work at colleges, and I can tell you, we don't teach young men and women how to critical think anymore. We teach them what to think, and it's absolutely horrendous. If you want to be successful in life, you got to be a critical thinker. You got to ask questions. You got to learn how to think, not what to think. And the simple questions that you ask yourself: why? Why not? Is there a better way? Does that make sense? Simple questions like that are the things that drive you to do things better, to want to make it better than what it is. As a leader, I'd always walk around and I'd walk, because I believe as a leader, you're down where the people who work for you are, where they work. You don't call them into your office to talk to them. You go down where they are. And one of the first questions I would always ask somebody is there something I can do to help you make that better? That critical thinking. Is there a better way to do that? They probably can tell you that. They probably know that there's a better way to do it. Nobody's ever asked them that question. So be that critical thinker that actually asks those questions. Never, ever stop learning. That it's so huge to be successful, is that you've got to prepare yourself for what's next. And the way you do that is that you learn. And that's through formal education, informal education, watching podcasts, watching some information stuff on the internet or on television, or listening to it over the radio, going to seminars, going to conferences, going to training events. All those kinds of things are helping to prepare you for whatever's coming next. I always tell people, take time to read every single day. And I get people all the time who tell me, I don't have time to read. And I always tell people, bull. You can make time to read if you want to. I make time every single day to read 10 pages. Even when I was deployed in Saudi Arabia for the first Gulf War, in Bosnia and Kosovo, 2 things I did every night. I read 10 pages in whatever book I was reading, no matter if I was going to bed at 2:00 in the morning or 8:00 at night, whatever it was. I before I went to bed, I read 10 pages and I wrote in my journal every night. So you can find time to read if you want to. The other piece of that is, don't just read inside your profession. I tell people all the time, great, every profession has people who have written about that profession. Read outside the profession. Other people in other professions have great ideas too, and you can learn just as much from them. I always tell people, my 2 favorite books had nothing to do with the military. My 2 favorite books is Lee Iacocca's autobiography, and I know I'm dating myself at the, especially when I talk to college age students. When I mention Lee Iacocca, they don't even know who that is. And John Wooden's On Leadership, one of the best books I've ever read in my life. Again, nothing to do with military, but that doesn't matter. People outside your profession have just as much to offer you as somebody who inside your profession. And the reason I tell you got to keep preparing yourself is because you never know what opportunity is coming next. And the way to take advantage of that opportunity is to be prepared to take it, so you can grab it when it comes available. Because lots of times they're only coming once. You don't get a second chance sometimes. You're only going to get that one chance at that opportunity. If you're not prepared, it's going to pass you by. And the next person who was motivated, who did have the self-discipline, who did prepare themselves, they're going to get that opportunity that you wanted. Success occurs when opportunity and preparedness comes together. When you're prepared and the opportunity shows itself, that's when you can be successful in getting that, moving on to that next level and doing what you want to do. I'll wrap up with this, and then if we got time, Paul, happy to answer some questions. First of all, success is not a marathon. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not let's get it done and then it's done. Success, like I said, is going to change over your lifetime. What you consider success today, 5 years from now, you may have a whole nother definition of success. So it's not a sprint, it is a marathon. So just keep that in mind. Decisions. Paul mentioned that we were going to talk a little bit about decisions. So I'm a firm believer that every decision has a consequence. Life is about decisions and consequences. Every decision you make has a consequence in it. Some are good, some are bad. And you got to get to the point in your life where you're making decisions that give you good consequences. Until you get to that point in your life, life can be pretty rough. So every time you're thinking about doing something, think about the consequences of what it is that you want to do. But decisions and consequences, because that's what life is about. I open this by saying that only you can define what definition you have for your success. Don't ever let somebody else decide what success is for you. I think General Colin Powell, who's still the most impressive man I ever met in my entire life, once said, if you let other people decide what you're going to do in life, don't be disappointed when you don't get what you want out of it, because you let somebody else decide it for you. You have to decide what it is that you want to do in life. Don't ever, ever let somebody else make decisions for you. Part of being successful, if you talk to people who are successful, one of the things they do every day, and I try to do it every night, is, and I do that kind of with my journal, is reflect on what you did that day. Take some time and pause and think back of what you did that day. Think of the good things you did, things that helped you move along to reach your next goal, to move along the ladder to more success. And think about the things you didn't do that you could have done, but you weren't motivated. You didn't have the self-discipline. You didn't have the habits to do it. What else could I have done that I didn't do to help me along that way? So take time to reflect. I think that is something that we forget about doing on a daily basis, but I think it's important. Then believe in yourself. You got to believe in yourself. And I had somebody one day who told me, we were talking about a cadet in our program, and they said, well, that cadet's cocky. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'd rather have somebody who's a little bit cocky than somebody who doesn't believe in themselves. If you don't believe you're good, then why should somebody else believe it? You got to believe in yourself before other people are going to believe in you. And again, that's what separates people, I think, very successful people from average people or people who are just successful, is that they believe in themselves and they believe in their decisions. They believe in all those things that you got to do. The last thing, and then I'll open up for questions. And I love this quote. And I don't even know who said it. I think when I saw it, it said anonymous. So, but I'm sure somebody's accredited to it. Success is never owned; it's rented, and the rent is due every day. I don't care how successful you are. Every day you got to wake up, put your shoes on, put your clothes on, go out and be successful again today. Because just because you're successful today doesn't mean you're always going to be successful. You got to work at it every single day. So just remember that. So I think I took about 40 minutes there, Paul. Happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
First off, I want to say that was really great. As you're talking, I cringed about 10 times, got inspired about 20. And, I was putting notes in the chat, but Jeffrey told me that my notes were kind of not showing up where they should. So I don't know what's going on with Zoom today, but I just want to say I really appreciate you coming. That was such a powerful message. And it's something that I think, back when I did sales coaching, I always thought the stuff that made the biggest impact is not the new stuff. It was the stuff that we should be doing that we're not doing. And sometimes that's the biggest gut punch. So I think you gave a few of us some gut punches today. So in a good way. Yeah.
I always, when I cringe is when somebody tells me they've come up with some new secret to success. I said, yeah, right. There is no need. It's kind of like when people come up with this, I got a new way of leadership. Leave me alone. We all know what it takes to be successful. It's whether or not we do it or not. I hope I just gave you some reminders of what you got to do and motivated you to do the things that you got to do on a daily basis. And I need them too. I mean, sometimes my wife, I won't do something and my wife will look at me and say, I got it. I mean, we all fall short on a daily basis, but I think that's why the reflection is so important at the end of the day. To just remind yourself, okay, I wasn't as good today as I could have been, and here's why.
Well, we've got some questions already. So
sure.
One of the first questions, before I call on people to have their hands up, Tom had asked in the chat. Tom Collins had asked, the gentleman who told you need to write a book. Why was he insisting you write a book?
So he, first of all, he could tell I was passionate about what I was doing, what I wanted to do, and about leadership, because we talked quite a bit about leadership, and I've kind of felt guilty that I was monopolizing his time, but I really enjoyed talking to him, and I could tell he enjoyed talking to me. We shared that passion about leadership, and I think that's so. He wanted me to take the experience that I had and make it available to other people that I wasn't going to have the opportunity to talk to. And since I have written the book and gotten feedback from people who have read it, I get that they say, it was powerful, and one person held it up and had it highlighted and tabbed and says, I keep it on my desk every day. And when I run into something, I pull it out and I see your advice on something. So I think he wanted me to get that out there so other people could benefit from what experience I have. Do I have all the experience in the world? Absolutely not. But I think over 40 years, I've gained a little bit that can help some people on a daily basis be a little bit better leader.
I'd say you've learned quite a bit that can help. So I'm going to call on some of the people that have their hands up. Let's go with one of our newest members, Crystal Barrow. You've got your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yes, although I don't want to go out of turn, but since you gave
I didn't know who raised their hand first, so just go for it.
Okay. My question was around, well, first of all, let me say thank you. I too was very inspired in a good way, motivated as well. And my question was around when you said to ask yourself, what would it take for me to be the best at ... And I'm curious if you recommend that be one thing. I don't know if you're familiar with the One Thing book by Gary Keller, where he says
I've
focus
never read
on.
it.
Okay. Essentially, he talks about focusing on, it's sort of the 80-20 rule, focusing on the one thing that kind of makes everything else flow, or everything else comes from that. But I was curious if you would recommend having the one thing when you answer that question, or 2, 3, 4, 5 things.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question, Crystal. I think you can, again, have multiple ones, but again, I'm a huge believer in priorities. So the first one should be the one that's really the important one. And then if you got other things that you want to do, we all have hobbies. At least I hope we all have hobbies. I like to fish. I want to be the best fisherman I can be, but that's not my number one priority. So I think you certainly can have multiple ones, but I'm a firm believer in the 80-20 rule that, 20%, 80% of your effort ought to be on what it is that you want to accomplish, and 20% on the minor things. So I think the answer is absolutely, you can do that for multiple things, but I think you got to prioritize what the first one is that is really going to help you be successful, whatever your definition of success is.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much.
And I'll add to that. I think the more in life that I've been scattered, trying to do a million things, the more I can bring it all into a central point of focus, the more successful I can be. It's hard to be. Go ahead.
No, absolutely, Paul. I think you're right. It all comes down to priorities. I mean, I think if we prioritize correctly, then you can put your effort where it really needs to be, with some left over to do other things, but the majority of your effort needs to be with what your number one priority is at that point.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, David, let's go ahead with David Schneer. What do you got, buddy?
Oakland, thank you for your service, and very, very much a topic near and dear to my heart. I have a question for you. I read a New York Times article where the CEO of Salesforce was asked by a Buddhist monk, what's more important, to be successful or to be happy? And I wanted to know how you felt on that, because his greedy Silicon Valley answer was both, but wondering how you would answer that.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I do believe that happiness is key, but I think if you are successful, if it's in the right thing, I mean, I guess you can be successful at doing bad things, I guess, and then maybe you're not very happy. But I think you can be both. You can be successful and be happy. I find that the more successful I am, and again, if you read my book or you've listened to me talk before, I'm a huge believer in servant leadership and taking care of people and helping to empower them to be the best version of themselves. So the more successful I am, the more successful my people are, the happier I am, because I have helped other people become successful and happy. So I think you can do both, but I think happiness is important. And I think if that isn't on your list of things to be, I feel sorry for people who go to work every day and hate what they do. If that's what you're doing, then you need to relook your definition of success, because I can't believe that you can be successful and hate what you're doing. I don't know how you can do that. So I think happiness is very important, but I think you have to understand that just being happy. I mean, I'd be happy if I could fish every day, all day, but that isn't going to pay my bills. So I got to be successful as well at something that is going to help allow me to be happy in other areas as well. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you. I was hoping you would say that.
And I think you said the key point there. It's how you define success, because you could have all the money in the world and not consider yourself successful.
Right. So, thank you, sir.
Thanks,
Michelle Lee Murder. And by the way, if you are at all interested in upping your game, learning how to maximize your revenue potential, you need to come see us next Thursday. Michelle Lee Murder is going to be putting on a rockstar presentation on leveraging bank code. You can go out to bossacademy.com/events. I highly encourage you to come. Michelle's amazing. She's a sponsor of this community, as is David Schneer. And we're just grateful for both of them. Michelle, what do you got?
First, I want to thank you for your service, Oakland. And there's I took so many notes, so much golden nuggets here. One, can you tell me where I can get your book? And if you have anything coming up that we can help support you with?
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Michelle. So my leadership book is out on Amazon. And it's also, if you want a signed copy, then just go to my website and send me an email, and we'll figure out the best way to make that happen for you. And this presentation I gave today is once I retire from my day job and I actually have some time to do something. This is going to be my second book. I'm going to write my book on secrets to success, and that'll be my second book. And so hopefully my goal, and I've got it written down, my last day of work here is the 20th of July. 21st of July, I'm going to start writing my second book. So we'll see how that works for me. But right now, really, my passion is to get out and talk to as many people as I can. And so if you ever hear of somebody who's looking for a keynote speaker or a guest speaker to talk about leadership or success, this presentation, then just pass them my information or pass me their information, and I'd love to do it. I was telling Paul, I right now I've got 5 or 6 that are already booked for this year, for the rest of the year, and I'm talking to about another 7 or 8 people that I think I might get a few of those. So that really is my passion at this point.
Okay, great. I would love to. I'll hook you up with some people who you should be able to get in front of and speak for. That would be awesome. And I just wanted to say, the couple of things that stuck out were, one, what your dad said about if you can't give it 75%, learn how to do it better or don't do it at all.
Yeah.
And that was just fantastic, because I know so many people who I want it more than they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're struggling, and it's because they aren't willing to give it more than 75%. They think they are, but they aren't. And the other thing was, write it down, commit to it, and then take action within 24 hours to do something to move forward on your goals. Love it.
Absolutely. Because if you don't do that, it's not a goal, it's a dream, and dreams are worthless. I mean, it's nice to have dreams, but that's not going to get you anywhere. You gotta write it down, and you gotta actually commit to do it. And that's when it becomes a goal, and that's when you can accomplish things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again.
Thanks.
And I want to tie it back to what you said about happiness and success. Michelle's a great example of that. She would be the first to tell you that she wasn't always happy. It wasn't always in a place where she felt like she's successful, but there's somebody who's truly aligned with where they want to be and where they're supposed to be. And, she's very inspiring to talk to. So thank you, Michelle. All right, Yvonne, you're a trooper for staying through this, not feeling well, but so we want to give you the platform. What do you got?
All right. So I hope you can hear me. I will try.
I
can. So I want to take you to task on something you said.
Okay.
And you said good enough doesn't work. The problem here is sometimes especially in my business. So for instance, if someone I'm working with is creating a table of contents for their book, at some point I say that's good enough for now. Okay, this is what we're going to use, and then we're going to proceed, and it's fluid. It may change, and in the end, then it will be great. And then back to my early days of being an entrepreneur, Seth Godin used to say, you have to ship. So you have to get to that point where you're done and it's good enough and you have to ship. So relevant to that, what he meant was you can't continually try to perfect something and do it better. And like in a book, for instance, you can't keep coming to me and say, well, I add this chapter, or I want to do this or whatever. And I say, well, that's for the next book. So we have to get to a point where we're ready to ship. And
I absolutely agree with you, Yvonne. When I say good enough, and I hate that when people say that, it's because that's when they stop. Unlike you, who say that's good enough for right now, we can always add something later, or we can go back to it and revisit it.
Yes.
The people who say that's good enough and I'm done, that's the people that I have problems with, because they're lazy. They've gotten to a point where, okay, they're not motivated anymore. They don't want to keep going, trying to get better. But, Patton had a famous saying that we in the military absolutely love, that an average plan, a good plan executed today is better than violently today is better than a perfect plan executed 3 weeks from now.
Yes.
So I absolutely agree with you. At some point, we all have deadlines. We all have things that we got to do. You work to get it at the best you can get it to that deadline. And then if that's all the time you've got and that's all the resources you have, then you go with it. But if you've got more time, if you have the ability to go further, then you should do that. So thanks for making me clear that up, because there are times when you have to say, okay, that's as good as I can get at this point. Absolutely.
Well, and I think when we say, well, that's good enough, we don't mean that it's less than what you will do or can do or whatever. It means that at this moment in time, we are at a place where this is what we have to use. And it's like if it's a book, for instance, and you're coming at me with more chapters, and I'm saying no. At this point, we agreed it was going to be a 200-page book. If we add all those chapters, it's going to be 300 pages, and all this other stuff applies. So let's look at a second book maybe. But in the end, we have to think to ourselves, not that it's good enough, but is this at the place it should be now and ready for
absolutely
the world, for me to put it out into the world.
Absolutely. So I think it all depends on how somebody's saying that's good enough. If it's like you're saying, then absolutely, I understand that and I believe that, because we all have deadlines. We all have things that we gotta meet. But it's when those people who just say it's good enough because they're not motivated anymore and they're just tired of doing those are the people that will never be successful.
Yeah, I never think of it that way. So
you don't. Successful people don't think of it that way, but unsuccessful people do, and we got to change their mindset that it's not good enough. Now, if that's the best you can do, then that's good enough. I got it. But if it's just because you're tired of doing it and you're not motivated and you're ready to move on to something else, that's good enough. That's the wrong answer.
Yeah. Cool.
Great. Thanks for making me clarify that.
And a guy who knows what it means to be disciplined and get things done, Charlie Timmons. What do you got for us, buddy?
Hi, bro. How are you?
Good.
Good to see you, Oak. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, Charlie.
Hey, Oak. When you talk, you're perfection. However, I know that you were always, there were times in your life where you had self-limiting beliefs. There were things that were holding you back. Can you share with the audience some of those things and how you overcame them?
Yeah. So I'll give you a perfect example. I started off as an infantry officer in the United States Army. Loved being an infantry officer. I was then told that I had to transfer to Quartermaster Corps, which I had no interest in doing. And I knew I wasn't going to enjoy it. And I thought about leaving the Army. But I had fear. I had a 2-year-old son and a 11-month-old daughter, and I had bills to pay. And so I said, no, I'm not leaving. And eventually I got my branch changed to something I wanted. But that was the fear. So when I told my father, I said, this is what's happening, and I really don't want to do it. And the thing that made me overcome it, and the thing that made me figure out, okay, you can do this. He said, son, I don't care if the Army's telling you to go sweep the floor in the motor pool. Be the best damn floor sweeper the Army has. He says, you don't always get to choose all throughout your life what it is that you want to do, but you can choose if you want to be the best at whatever it is that you're having to do. And so that kind of woke me up, and I said, okay, yeah, grow up, young man. And like I said, eventually through hard work and some efforts, I got my branch changed back to another branch that I really wanted. And I loved every minute of it. But that was probably one of the hardest decisions I made was, do I stay in the Army or do I get out at that point? Because it really didn't fit my goal where I wanted to go. But eventually, because of the advice my father gave me, I was able to turn it around and do what I wanted to do.
One of the core principles of this group, this Boss Academy, is that we're here to help one another succeed and grow. Your father helped you break through that point in your life. We need other people.
Yeah.
We can't keep it to ourselves. We have to share it, so other people have an opportunity to offer their wisdom and their guidance to help us break through, because we all have the ability to be great. We all have a destiny that we're all trying to achieve. We can't do it alone. We need to do it with other people, and that's what Boss Academy is all about. Oak, thanks so much for speaking today.
Yeah, well, thanks, Charlie. And that goes back to what we've talked about and what I talk about in my book, is that we all need mentors. I don't care how successful you are, you still need a mentor. I don't care how high up you get in whatever organization. If you're the CEO, the top person in your organization, you need to go find a mentor from another organization to help you, because we all need mentors and coach. And I don't think we're doing a good job of doing that right in this world today, helping to develop that next generation of leaders. We're not doing a good job of it. I see it every day.
We have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to reach a bigger audience now in this next chapter of your life, Coop.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, unless anybody has anything else, I just want to say, Oak, this was amazing. I
have one more thing, Paul.
Yes, Yvonne.
I know I'm such a I don't know what I am.
Well, you're a little needy, but you know what? We love you anyway, so go for it.
I know. One thing that you said, and I can't go back and quote what you said, Oakland, but it reminded me of a mentor I had who would always answer a question with another question. So he would say to me, so how are you going to make that happen? And I'd say, I don't know. I really don't know how to do that. And he'd say, well, if you did know, what would you do? And I said, I can't think. And he just keep going on until finally I said, well, I would do this and this. And he said, so. He
there
did
it is.
know, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think it's so important that we go back to that question. What would it take? And we all know the answer to it. It's in there somewhere. And if it's not, if you go through that process, you'll come up with what it's going to take. And then you just got to commit to doing it. And then you can make stuff that you never thought would happen.
Yeah, I know exactly who Yvonne is talking about. And I mean, he was just relentless. If anybody said it can't be done, it's impossible. But if it could be done, how would you go about it?
That's the question. You always got to ask yourself, what if? What if it could? And it might not be able to. There are things in this world that you're not going to be able to do. I got it. But at least ask the question and go down that road to figure out and make yourself figure out for yourself that, that can't be done right now. And that's okay. Not everything can be. But if it can be, if you ask the question, you might get there.
Yeah, I love it. Daya and Jennifer Tester, I want to thank you guys for staying on, guests here today. Hopefully you enjoyed your experience. You know, this was we don't always have presentations on Friday, but when we do, we always try and bring in somebody who's going to knock it out of the park. And Oakland, you exceeded expectation today. I thought you did a wonderful job. Great message. I'm going to be keeled over most of the day with the sore stomach that you've given me, but it's given me some food for thought, and I'm going to be definitely working on that bedtime situation too. I'm horrible about my discipline at night, and I love that because I think when I think most of us have seen that video online where there's a military professional talking about how the greatest lesson he ever had was make your bed every day.
Yeah.
And that's a minor thing in life. However, it's a major thing when you can do it every day and it becomes just part of
attention
how we live.
To details, small details. I'd make my bed every day when I'm out talking and I'm in a hotel. I make my bed in a hotel.
Nice.
Wow.
I mean, I do it every day.
Now, come July, I'm going to be really upset if you don't come talk to me about being a part of Boss Academy because we need leaders like you in here. And I think you'd gain a lot being around this group as well.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. I told you before, I would love to be. Right now, I just don't have time. But But after I get done with my day job, then I got time.
Beautiful. Well, thank you all for coming. Anything anybody else wants to close with? Go sign up for Michelle's event next Thursday. It's free. It's going to be a 90-minute workshop, but it is going to blow your minds, guys. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.